Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Just Like You show. I am your host, Alexis Christine, and I am a spiritual mindset coach and Reiki master, helping women break through their limiting beliefs, rewire their brain, and manifest the life of their dreams. Just Like You is a podcast for all of the divine souls looking for guidance on their healing and ascension journey. We explore the depths of the universe, hold space for vulnerable conversations about spirituality and self-development, delve into the esoteric things like how to manifest, star seeds, the astral realm, and shed light on taboo topics such as plant medicine and so much more. I am honored that you are here to take this journey with me. I want everyone listening to be able to leave each episode feeling inspired and having learned something tangible to take away into their day-to-day life. If you feel called to work with me or explore this work deeper, please reach out at imalexischristine.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at iam.alexischristine. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Just Like You show. I am your host, Alexis Christine, and today I have a wonderful guest named Indi. She is a 25-year-old gender studies academic from Melbourne, Australia. She is sex positive, body positive, intersectional feminist, and the host of the Hot Girls Theory podcast. And she is a magical mix of BDE, intuition, and intelligence all in one. And I'm so excited to have her here. Indi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. And I also just want to say your pronunciation of Melbourne was actually really, really good. I was really surprised at how good it was. I was like, oh, she actually kind of said it right.
I have friends in Australia. And then my
Good.
sister actually lived there for, I don't want to say it was like 3 or 4 months. So I feel like I got the pronunciation down.
Yeah, fair.
Thank you so much for being here today. How are you? How's your day going? What's your energy like?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, it's 7:30 right now, and I have been out for most of the day, but like mostly working on podcast stuff today for Hot Girls. So I feel like it's kind of good for me to be in the zone of like recording again. So I'm ready to have a great conversation with you today.
Amazing. Love that. Okay, so I always start with the same couple questions. Do you know what your sun, moon, and rising are?
I do. So I'm a Cancer sun with an Aries moon and a Taurus rising.
Wow, you've got three different what's the word?
Like elements.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Elements.
Yeah.
You got 3 elements in there. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And do you know what your human design is?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's fine. That's just another thing that I'm always so curious about people's human designs, because I feel like I know a lot more about it than astrology. And then as soon as I hear like what their energy type is, I'm like, ooh, okay.
Could you explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So human design is basically like very simply put, how your energy works. So it uses the same information as astrology with your birth time and your birthplace, but there's 5 different energy types. So there's reflectors, projectors, manifestors, generators, and then manifesting generators. And
Wow.
each one of those is like a different type of energy. So reflectors basically are a mirror. So they just mirror everything back. So a lot of times they'll end up triggering a lot of people because they're reflecting back to the person what their insecurities and whatever else are.
And if you're not ready for that, it can be a bit confronting. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a manifester, which means that I actually have like a quote unquote repelling aura. So like I'm pushing energy out. So sometimes people can like be okay with it. Sometimes they don't. It's not repelling as in pushing people away, but more just like sharing the energy and like giving off. And I kind of like work in waves of inspiration. And then projectors they absorb a lot of people's energy. So they need a lot of like alone time to like rest and recuperate. And generators are just like go nonstop. They're the people you see that have like 24/7 energy and they like never just chill. And then man gens are like they're their own, but they're kind of a mix of like manifestor and a generator. They're the people who do like 80 things at once. So like they'll be like writing a book, and then the next week they're doing something else, and the next week they're doing something else, and they're like always changing jobs, have a million different interests. And that's like that's what works for them. It's not a bad thing. It's like they're meant to kind of explore and play around. And that's just like the energies, but then it goes into how your emotions work, what your inner authority is. There's like different life paths, which explain kind of like the different, like your subconscious and conscious. And like, there's just so much. It's so interesting though.
That sounds super interesting. I'm going to have to look at something. I'm going to have to figure out what my human design is after this, because that's super interesting.
Yeah. There's an episode on it too you can listen to. It's so good.
I will. I've been going through some of the episodes, so I haven't got to that one yet. It'll be the next one.
Sounds good. And the next question I just like to ask is, can you give everyone a little bit of background on kind of like who you are, how you were raised? So it's like they can relate a little more as we're going through the episode.
Yes. So I guess, I mean, as you described me at the start is how I would describe myself for me in like adulthood. And that's how I've like really come into myself. Like I'm really passionate. I'm very intense. I'm very like upfront. I'm very straightforward. And I'm also very like no bullshit. So like I don't have time or energy or space for people who aren't on my wavelength and aren't kind of giving me the energy that I need or deserve.
Love
so and I've been very like headstrong and very that way since I was really quite young as well. But I feel like, you know, it's all really well and good to say that, but there is definitely times where like, you know, your insecurities get the best of you or people manipulate you and things like that. So in terms of how I was raised and where I came from, I mean, we'll get into like the nitty gritty of it a little bit later, I'm sure. But, you know, I had a pretty turbulent upbringing for sure. It was very like relaxed in a sense of like my parents had a lot of trust in me for various reasons. And I think it was, again, because I've always been such a like strong individual that they kind of knew that I wasn't going to do the wrong thing, at least not intentionally, and I wasn't going to misbehave in certain ways. So like I had split up parents from like as early as I can remember. Like haven't been together for a really long time. So I had like a single mom, but I also had like my dad co-parenting, and you know, my dad passed away when I was a teenager. So that also really impacted my upbringing, and like my whole life kind of just stopped at that point in time. So turbulent childhood, turbulent adolescence. And then like, now that I'm an adult, I'm finally like, okay, I'm taking time for me. I'm no longer going to take care of anyone else. I'm done being, you know, because I feel like for, again, reasons we'll get into, I was very much the parent and the caregiver in my relationships with adults in my life. So my mum and dad definitely much more the caregiver than they were to me. So I'm really, really, really good at putting up boundaries and being like, no, and and letting things in when I have energy for it, and saying I'm not prepared for that right now. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. That I find it so interesting that you had the like kind of the caregiver role, because that's something I relate to a little bit, not so much with my parents, but I feel like because I have 3 sisters, and my youngest one is about a 6-year difference. So I think it just got to the point where my mom was like, okay, like I'm over it. You can, you can just do this now. And like, I was driving her to all her sports stuff, all her doctor's appointments. Like I kind of became like that caregiver for her. So I have a lot of that like nurturing energy in me naturally as well. Well, I wouldn't say naturally, I guess maybe it's conditioned, but
I mean, it can be conditioned. I mean, I always kind of say like I have quite a lot of Cancer in my birth chart. So I do think that my nurturing side definitely comes from my Cancer energy. And I also think that my ability to sense bullshit also comes from my Cancer energy. But I was an only child. So I feel like, and I didn't really have any cousins. I didn't really grow up around any children. So I feel like I always had a lot of adult energy around me. So I was always kind of way more like mature for my age, and always way more wise. Like I've always had people be like, oh my God, you're this young. Like I thought you were so much older, not because I look older, but because I give off that energy and that vibe of like, and I think it comes back to like, I feel like I'm an old soul. I feel like I've lived different lives.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
I was going
like,
to ask, because I get the same thing all the time. Like ever since, like I used to have the nickname as like the mom of my friend group, like, cause I was just always was like, everyone was like, oh, you seem a lot more like mature for your age. But it's because I have lived, like this is my first incarnation on earth, but I've had so many past lives. Like my soul is just so ancient. And I feel like that's kind of what comes through. So I have this mix of just like giddy happiness, excitement for life that's like very in its child essence, with like the maturity and like the just no BS kind of attitude of like, I've done this a million times. Like, I'm over it. So when you say that you feel like you've had a million different lives, do you feel like they've all been on earth?
I mean, the thing is I wouldn't say I'm as in touch with that whole understand. Like I'm like know of it, of like past lives, in a sense of like my dad was super into spirituality, and he believed very much in reincarnation. So he would always talk to me about it when I was younger. And, you know, he often would talk to me about how he dreamt of like, he was very, very, very into like Egyptian
Yes.
like mythology and like past lives stuff to do with like Egypt. So he was like, I always dream about like a life that I live in Egypt, and it's the same, not like the same dream, but the same kind of, I guess, reoccurring characters. Like I'm always the same person for that kind of thing. And so for me, like I couldn't tell you whether or not I've lived those lives on Earth, but I definitely feel like I have the energy of lots of different kinds of experiences that I can't really explain. It kind of transcends my bodily, earthly living experience now, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. I'm so excited for you to like eventually at some point dig into that and see what all the
Yeah,
past lives were. I had a
100%.
past life regression. Was it 2 weeks ago now? And it was like, because I've always tried to do it myself and I've had little tidbits of information, but it's never been one of those super like deep and I want to say like informational ones. I always just get like flashes of things. And so I actually had it done and it was like so life-changing, so transformative and just like honestly really exciting. So I'm excited for you when you do tap into that.
Yeah,
It'll be a fun
I'm very
experience.
much, yeah, I put a lot of emphasis on like I do a lot of tarot related spirituality, and I really love crystals. I think who doesn't love
Oh,
crystals? They're
literally
pretty,
crystal
and then
necklace.
they also have energy. So for me, I'm like working my way through like astrology and tarot and crystals, and then like I'll kind of advance as I feel it comes to me, because it's like that thing of like I don't want to force it because then it's not going to work, you know?
Exactly. That's how I feel. I'm getting into Reiki and bringing that into my practice. And I've always been kind of fascinated by it, but never really deeply connected with it. And then in my holistic training, I just happened to get my level 1 and level 2. It was included. And I've just naturally found such a connection to it. And it's so powerful. So now I'm exploring that. And it's, yeah, you don't want to force it before you're ready. So I totally get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you find spirituality and the tarot and all of that kind of stuff? What kind of led you there?
And like I said, my dad has always been super spiritual. He's always been like really on the side of like Buddhism and Hinduism. Like that's kind of what he really was drawn to when I was younger. And I, again, like it's hard because I was like really, really young whenever we would have these kinds of conversations or he'd talk to me about it, but it was always like him kind of preaching that vibe. And then again, this is like so stereotypical. I like was really into like the TV show Charmed as a kid.
Oh my God,
So
yes.
so even though I obviously you can critique I guess like fandom, I like, you know, TV show versions of like witches and paganism and things like that, it really did kind of open that inside me of like, oh, this is something I'm actually really interested in outside of it just being a TV show that I enjoy. Like I enjoy what it stands for and what it means, and then kind of tapping into these like ancestral roots and kind of looking back on history and how it's influenced us. And especially coming from Australia, where it's like, you know, there's such a deep, rich Indigenous culture here that is really, I think, not emphasized enough because our country likes to kind of ignore all of the really interesting spirituality of coming from this country. And so that was something that I really wanted to include in like obviously a non like appropriative way, but in a way where I was like honoring the fact that like I live in Australia, I live in a land that was colonized, like that kind of energy as well. So for me, it's kind of like it's a journey, but then also trying to manage spirituality in like a capitalist society is really hard. And like, you know, like I would want to spend 24 hours a day on this stuff if I could, but I can't because, you know, I gotta go make money and pay bills. So it is really hard to, sometimes you get so burnt out that you don't have time for these things. And that's something that Ash, my co-host, and I have been talking a lot about on the podcast. Is she's like, you know, we had this really deep couple of episodes maybe a couple of months ago now about mental health, and we were having a really candid conversation about our mental health. And I said to her, I was like, babe, like your biggest issue is you're not spending enough time on your spirituality. I'm like, it's not just that your body's disconnected, it's that your mind and spiritual, like, and your spirit is all disconnected. Like it's your body's here, your mind's there, and your spirit's there, and you need to align them. And that's going to be what creates this kind of, you know, symmetry in your life that you need to get back to. And I think that's kind of one of the most underrated things when it comes to mental health and how we live our lives is we don't put enough emphasis on how important our spiritual health is as much as our bodily health and our mental health.
Oh, I agree with that 100,000%. And even when I am like feeling kind of burnt out from work or anything else, I'm realizing it's like I'm feeling like this because I'm not doing my daily walks. I'm not doing my daily earthing.
Mm,
I'm not meditating. Like I'm letting go of all of my self-care practices that I know keep me centered and keep me grounded because I'm so burnt out that I just don't have the energy for it. But it's like, you need to make time for it or else it's never gonna kind of turn around. And actually, it was really funny. Yesterday, I got on a call with someone, and a few months ago, I'd seen them on like a work offsite, and we were all out for lunch one day, so just eating in a park. And I took my shoes and socks off and I just started grounding. And he was kind of looking at me like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm earthing. Like, this is good for you. Like, this is calming
mm,
my, like my system down and like, reconnecting me back. And he was kind of like, okay. And then I guess when he went home, he told his wife, and his wife was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then yesterday on the call, he was like, you know what? Every day I've been going out and just standing in the grass and it's made such a difference. I feel so good. I was like, I told you.
mm.
And I just
It's
think,
definitely a thing.
yeah, it's like the smallest little thing you can do to help take care of yourself and like keep you in a more grounded and centered state that a lot of people like. I feel like they're intimidated by it almost because they see it as like some big thing they have to do, and really just go into your backyard for 5 minutes in your bare feet and you're good. Like something so
Mm.
little can make such an impact.
Absolutely. And that's, I think also is valid though, like if people are intimidated by spirituality, because there
Yeah.
is definitely a lot of things that have really like significant cultural impacts on certain, people and places and contexts. And you don't want to like mess with something that you don't know anything about. So I think a lot of people kind of get overwhelmed by the idea that they have to do a lot of research before going
Hmm.
into something. And I think that's why it's like, well, you start with the simple stuff. You go outside and you get in touch with nature. Like that is ultimately where we all come from, and it's where we're going to end up again. So like you just have to start with those small parts of spirituality that connect you, and then once you understand, you can find your own way from there. And obviously if you're going to go about it and you're already kind of a little bit worried, that means you're going to be way more self-aware, and that's
Hmm.
really what you want. You want to be self-aware so that you don't make mistakes and so that you do your research. And once you find that time, it becomes easier and easier because it's like, as like exercising, you make the time,
Yeah.
and then you're going to keep making it a habit. And again, like sometimes that's easier said than done, and I totally get that. But the more you do it, and even if you fall off the bandwagon for like a week, you can pick it back up. It's never, I think the hardest part is the pressure. It's always worse for yourself. Like you're always putting the worst
Yes,
pressure on yourself.
always.
It's never coming from anyone else. And that's like the hardest part, is the pressure that you put on yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I have a really random side note that I just thought
Okay.
of. So I see that you have a butterfly tattoo on your chest. And then I also noticed behind you, you've got like a butterfly picture. What is
Yeah.
the significance for you with butterflies?
So for butterflies and just in general, like I've got a lot of floral motifs
Okay.
and of tattoos. Like I've got a really big like snake with like a peony
Ooh,
and
into
a
that.
rose here. Yeah. And so for me, like this tattoo specifically, it's inspired by a quote from Wuthering Heights. And if you have, it's like an Emily Bronte, it's like an old literature thing. Like I'm really,
Hmm.
again, into old literature. And the quote is, the more hurt she gets, the more venomous she grows. And for me, um, like nature, as we kind of have mentioned, it's all about like transformation and like coming back to this where you came from. And so again, with the butterfly, it's all about transformation and
Hmm.
becoming, I guess, like a higher version of yourself. And with that quote for me, it was like I was going through a lot of pain and trauma from friends and family. And whilst I'm such a like, okay, nope, these are my boundaries. If you're not aligning with me, I'm cutting you off. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to go through that and to cut people off, especially your family. Like I've had to cut
Yes.
off a lot of my family, and it's really isolating and it's really scary. And it's really hard to kind of articulate that to people who don't understand. So for me, I like, yes, I became venomous in a sense, like if you kind of can understand how I'm interpreting that. But I also became softer to myself because I was allowing other I was no longer allowing, sorry, other people to hurt me. I was taking time for myself. And so the butterfly and the snake and the rose, and again, it's kind of like about finding beauty in nature. And for me, my tattoos are like ways that I can illustrate my life in a way that is like
Hmm.
really deep and personal to myself. And sure, I have tattoos where I'm like, yeah, it's just pretty and I liked it. But for the most part, it's about kind of like, yeah, creating a story of my life.
I think that is so beautiful. I've actually lately really been resonating with snakes and then oddly
Mm,
dragons. So I love that you have like the snake one there. That's so cool.
yeah.
Um, I want to talk a little bit about something you mentioned about having to, when you're on your journey, cut people off and set boundaries. Cause I actually had someone
Mhm.
ask me about this the other day because on like over the last few years, I've lost a lot of people throughout my journey. Obviously not like they're still on this earth, but I'm just
Yeah.
no longer friends with them, or we don't really talk anymore, or we grew apart. And it actually is one of, I think, the hardest things that people don't really realize happens, because as you're going on your journey and you're up leveling and you're becoming new versions of yourself, whether you want it to or not, like you just kind of disalign with certain people, or you stop accepting the ways that certain people treat you, and then you set a boundary and they decide to leave because they're not willing to work with you in
Mm,
that way. And it does hurt. Like I've had people literally just drop me because I disagreed with them on one thing, and it was like people that I was very very close to. And what I just want to say for people is that yes, it's hard, but the universe will remove people out of your life that are no longer needing to be there. So people come in and out of our lives for a reason. Some people are just coming to teach us something and then they leave. Some people are here for the long haul, but just know that whoever's meant to be in your life will stay, and that everyone is here for a reason. So if you're in that position where you're having to set a boundary, or you're on the verge of losing someone, or you've just lost someone, just even if you can't see it now, know that in the future you'll be able to look back and be like, oh, this is why that happened. And just be grateful for the time that you did have with them.
absolutely.
Do you want to take a little step back? Because you did also mention in that about the trauma that you went through.
Mm.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I guess that kind of all relates to each other because
Mhm.
a lot of the people I've had to cut out of my life have primarily been my family, because my friends, I feel like I'm so picky with friends. Like I have lots of friends, don't get me wrong, but like when it comes to like real life friends that I see all the
Mhm.
time or I talk to all the time, like I again, I can smell the bullshit. I can tell when someone's kind of a fake person and I don't have time for it. Like I'm just, I don't like
Yeah.
it. And I feel like when I was really, really little, I was not like this. And so like when I was in primary school or like elementary school for American people, I was constantly like, I would have people who would constantly try and make me feel bad about myself, whether that be because I was like tall and big and like loud. And, I didn't have a conventional upbringing, which I'll get to in a minute. But when it comes to like that experience, I was always like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I did the wrong. And then I also realized in adulthood that I also have autism and ADHD. So I'm neurodivergent.
Wow.
And so I was constantly missing social cues as a kid. So when I was constantly missing, but also like a really big people person. So explain that. I don't know. But, you know, I really was trying to please everyone when I was a kid because I wanted friends, because I didn't have
Mhm.
siblings and things like that. And when it comes to my trauma, so I guess like from childhood, like I grew up with drug addicted parents. And before, I want to preface before I kind of get into it any further, like this does not mean that my parents were bad people or that they were bad parents or that I was abused and neglected. Like my
Mhm.
parents weren't the kind of people who were going to choose between feeding me and drugs. And they weren't the kind of parents who were going to, exploit me to get money for drugs. Like I know that there is definitely people who have experienced that, and that is
Mhm.
really, really horrible. But for me, my parents were like 25 when they had, so they're my age when they had me. And my parents had kind of been on and off drug users since they were in their teens. So my mum had a really, really, really abusive parent. So her mum was really, really emotionally neglective, and like just one of and again, this is the thing, like my grandma on that side is just horrible. Like she's been out of my life since I was 15.
Wow.
um because where the how like it's just ridiculous when I was never putting up with that, but my mom was consistently like, oh, she's my mom, I love her, she's my mom, I love her. And I was
Yeah.
like, mom, no. So I feel like, the older I got, the more I was like, I'm not dealing with that from that side immediately. So my mom again, when you're autistic, you're more likely to have also autistic parents, and both of my parents were also autistic, looking back on it
Oh.
at least. So my mom was very addicted to methamphetamines, and I know that drugs are a little bit different in the States, but she was intravenously using, which means with a needle. And when you are ADHD, what they prescribe to you is medical grade methamphetamines. So for my mom, her addiction was about normalizing and like leveling out her brain chemistry. So that's why she looked back on it when I was like probably 19 or 20 and was like, whoa, like I was normal when I was doing drugs. Like I wasn't bouncing off the walls talking to you for like 8 hours at a time when I was doing meth. I was sitting there like chilling out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like in a way, that self-medication, because she didn't have the understanding or the education to be able to like empower herself with the knowledge that she has now of like, oh, I was neurodivergent and I'm okay. And for my dad is like always had this kind of really strange relationship with drugs. He was put on anti-anxiety medication when he was 7 years old, and he got really addicted to that from a really young age.
7.
Yeah. So he was kind of like that age where like, you know, in the 70s where parents and married people started to like cheat and leave and that kind of thing. So he experienced that with his parents, and so he was put on anti-anxiety medication, and then, you know, started to kind of go through all the different kinds of drugs until he eventually started to use heroin. Wow. And so so throughout my childhood, my mom was on meth and my dad was on heroin, but because I was with one parent 2 weeks, and the other, you know, I was kind of on and off. They would like use whilst I was gone and then be clean whilst I was there. So it was like I was never around it per se, but that doesn't mean that obviously things didn't happen. And I definitely saw and experienced things that no child should have to experience. And so as I grew up, you know, there was definitely times when like my mom had been clean since I was probably about 7 or 10. And there's definitely like traumatic things. Like I remember one time she had a relapse, and she had taken methamphetamines with a friend whilst I was there. And like, I was probably like, I don't know, like, I want to say like 11 or 12. And I came down the stairs and my mom had like covered herself in bruises. She'd picked out all of her eyelashes. She'd picked out all of her eyebrows. She like self-harmed because she relapsed and like didn't want that after the fact. You know what I mean? Like she realized she'd made a bad decision and she just like self-harmed. And I like immediately was like in mom mode, like covering her bruises in like ice and like trying to, you know, talk her out of like, and she was like okay by that point, but she like called my dad and was like, you need to come get our daughter because I'm not good right now. And my dad came, and, you know, again, my dad had been clean throughout periods of times as well, but he had experienced a really bad breakup, like relationship breakdown when I was like, again, probably maybe around 13. And we had been living with my grandma, and he had been like on and off using again. And the thing about when you're on and off using again after having used for so long is like your body isn't accustomed to the level of drugs that you were taking. So what ended up happening was my dad overdosed on heroin when I was 15 on my birthday, which is like and that like kind of is hard to talk about, but like I'm also okay. So that was about 10 years ago now, obviously, because I was 15 and I'm 25 now. But you know, it's hard because the thing is about like reflecting on my dad passing away was like, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, I think if anything, it was actually a good thing for me because I think he was very stuck. I think he was such a like sad human being. Like the thing about my dad was like, he felt so much that he just wanted to like numb it all. Yeah. And so that's why he chose the drugs that he chose. And my mom chose the drugs that she chose. And so they were really, really good parents and then really, really shit parents in other ways. So it's like kind of this hard thing of like, I want to be real and candid about like the what I experienced, but I also don't want people to like think I'm trying to stigmatize drug abusers. I'm trying to, if anything, humanize them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And so when my dad passed away, it caused a really big rift in my family because my grandma and my dad had a really codependent relationship. It was, you know, I was always just kind of like in the backseat of that relationship. I feel watching them have this relationship that didn't ever really make sense to me. And my grandma really wanted me to fit that role and be that codependent person with her now that my dad was gone. And I was 15, like I was a child. So I had no way to articulate how I felt. my grandma, because I was living with my dad more because I was at high school then. So I was living with my dad during the semester and then living with my mum during like school holidays and things like that. So because it was like middle of the school semester, at the time, my grandma assumed that I was going to stay there. And like, you know, she's like, oh, we got you a new bed and we put it together. And I was like, I'm going to go live with my mom because like my dad's dead and I don't want to live here. Like he literally died in this house. What do you, what do you expect of me?
So triggering to stay in that environment. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I was trying to kind of say, oh, like I'm going to go live with my mom, it was like this big, like, oh, how could you moment? And I immediately was like, that's weird. That's so weird. But I was still processing my grief and I didn't really have time then to deal with it. And so flash forward, well, I guess like I'll talk about my grief. So I spent like probably an entire year just like dealing with it. And I would on and off go to school, but because I was in high school, like, and they were really supportive of me when I did go back, you know, so it was really good. I didn't miss any grades or anything like that. So for the kind of duration of that year, it was just like about processing that. And I'm such a like internal person with my feelings, especially with my family, because I have an avoidant attachment type with my family because of the dysfunction.
Yeah.
So I don't like to be upfront with them about how I feel because it just feels unnatural to me. Like I'm the one who's supposed to take care of them. They're not supposed to take care of me. It doesn't feel right. So when I was probably about 18, my grandma was diagnosed with cancer and I hadn't spent a lot of time around her at this point in time. I was very much like keeping my distance, didn't want to talk to her because she was constantly like, my son died and I'm grieving and I'm sad and you should be sad. She just wanted me to like cry with her all the time. And like, I wasn't going to do that because I didn't lose my son, I lost my dad. And a big thing for her was her denial of how he died. And like, I was the one who found his body. Like, I know how he died. Like, you know, you see someone in a compromising position, like that's trauma. That also stems from like how I had a traumatic childhood because of the fact that he was a drug addict. So her trying to deny how he died was another layer of her basically denying my identity and my trauma and my experience. And so she was doing that. And then when we were trying to have conversations, because I was trying to have a relationship with her, which was already strained because of all of this. You know, we were having this conversation one day and she just like broke down in tears and like started kind of almost screaming at me like, you left me here, you left me alone in this big house, you know, it's all your fault why I am the way I am. And like like I just didn't know how to respond because I didn't know how to articulate myself. I didn't know how to, like, again, it's kind of that situation of like, you're always told to stand up to your elders and respect your elders. But again, this is something I've learned through this experience. It's like, if you're not going to give me respect, I can't give you respect back. Like if that's not going to be reciprocal, I can't be in that situation. So I kind of just like, you know, got out of that as best I could. But every time I tried to engage in conversations with my grandmother about my life now and who I am now and how I felt, she just wouldn't listen. And it would be kind of like talking to a brick wall about she just wouldn't listen. And so that's kind of normal with the older generation. But I ended up writing a letter because I was trying to I was going through therapy and I was probably 21 because it was just years and years of this same repetitive, me trying to have a relationship with her and her just being super narcissistic and me being okay, well, I can't help you if you don't want to be helped. And so I wrote a letter because I was going through therapy to deal with residual grief and deal with my trauma. And I had a really great therapist who was you should write a letter. And even if you don't write the letter, you're going to feel better after writing the letter. So I did. And I sent it because I wanted not necessarily to have a relationship. I wasn't sure if that I could even salvage that at that point, but I wanted to be able to articulate my trauma because I had really kind of internalized a lot of body shaming trauma from my grandmother over the years as well. And I wanted to talk to her about that. And I wanted to say, hey, I know you didn't ever mean malice with this, but I really feel this way because of this situation. It was never a kind of thing where I was going, you're a bad person. And I don't, I was never you made me feel like this and you did this and blah, blah, blah. I was very trying to keep it calm and really rational about it. And then the kind of response, I didn't get a response from her at all. I did not get a response. And I had shown my uncle, so my dad's brother, the letter, and he was just you know, at first it was like, oh, I had no idea about any of this. Like, I obviously understood, like, you know, my mom's side and your grandma's side, but I didn't know your perspective. And I'm so grateful that you've like opened up this way. And then after I sent the letter, it was like a totally different story. It was totally like, you need to apologize for your actions and you're an adult. You need to deal with this like an adult. Yeah. And I was like, the point of the letter was that I was a child. Like I may be an adult now. And this is kind of that thing coming back to like, you know, when you're young and you're wise beyond your years, people will look at you like you're an adult. So even though I was 15 when my dad died, I was an adult. And even though I was 18 when my grandma was telling me that it was all my fault and that I shouldn't have left her in that big house, I was still a child. You know, like, I mean, sorry, I was an adult at that point. So it was just this perspective of like, I had to kind of sit down, shut up and do what she said because she was my grandmother, which never sat right with me. So, you know, after a very explosive, you know, conversation and that letter was sent and I got that response, I was kind of just like, okay, I've done all I can. Like I'm gonna slowly take my foot off of the accelerator and I'm gonna put it on the brake and I'm taking myself away from this situation, this environment, and this energy because it doesn't serve me anymore. And at that point, my mum and I had done so much to mend our relationship. Like still wasn't great. And I don't think it ever got like really, really great until I moved out because I think when you're kind of constantly living with someone, but my mom had been doing a lot to work on herself. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put that energy into like the parent or the family member who's actually trying to preserve this relationship and nurture me. And you know, that's been one of the really, really great things about just like deciding where to put my energy based off of these kinds of life events is I'm not wasting time, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's basically like the main major events that I can give you in that amount of time.
I think that's really hard too with your grandma because when people don't know how to process or how to feel or how to actually just accept things, they start to project it all and then they go into this victim mindset and like that is their identity. So if they were to heal from that or move on from it and no longer be the quote unquote victim, it's like, who are they? They're scared to actually let it go because they don't know who they are on the inside. And like, that is their life now. Like they are the victim and then they just wallow in it. And I have a few people in my life who are like that. And it's hard to see because it makes me sad. I'm like, I just want to help you. Like, I literally just want to like help you heal so you can like find inner peace and like become your true self and not have to be stuck in this negative, toxic mindset and push all these people away and project everything onto everyone else. But like, it's especially with the older generations, it's a lot harder to kind of get them to see another way. And it's hard.
I think like as well, like my grandma has always kind of been that kind of person. Like I think that she ever since I think like really the turning point was like her being cheated on when she was like in her early 20s with these two kids and this man that she had been married to left. And I think she decided because I don't think it's an active choice, but I think it's like a societal thing, like how we respond to certain people in certain situations. We add like victim or that kind of label onto a lot of people, like certain people, a lot easier. And I think being a woman in that environment, especially like a white woman, you know, it would have been a lot easier for her to kind of get that victim title. And I think she kind of went, because again, like none of her, like she had been married 3 times and none of her relationships ended up being good. I'm like, she had a marriage again before I was even born, and that was, you know, a failure. And then the person who I grew up as my grandpa was not the person we thought he was. And again, that was kind of like every single like moment and big monumental relationship she had, she would use that, not like necessarily to her advantage, I don't want to say that, but like she would, I guess, kind of milk it in a sense, like, and be like, oh, like poor me, what was me? And I wasn't here for that energy, because that's like, well, you should be making better decisions. Like, again, not to victim blame, because obviously there are people who take advantage of people, but I definitely think I was just like, you have the ability to not be this person.
Yes.
And the fact that you're not, the fact that you're not like going into that and trying to heal and figure out what's kind of wrong in your life, and you're just continuously letting these situations happen again and again and again, I'm not here for it. And it was like this big thing. It was such a victim mentality when my dad died. It was such a like, my son died, my son this, my son that. Like like, this was something that I learned when I was in therapy about like how people grieve. It's like, you'll either grieve in a healthy way where you'll process the emotions, or you'll grieve in a way that's kind of toxic where you'll idolize the person who passed away. And my dad wasn't someone to be idolized. Like, yes, I love my dad, and I, you know, learn a lot of valuable life experiences, but to say that him passing away was a bad thing, I will never be able to say, because my life would be dramatically different if he didn't die. And I don't think it would have been better. I would have stayed in a situation where I was really, really unhappy. I was, you know, I wasn't thriving, and my life, like, it got turned upside down. But like, that grief and that year of my life and these past 10 years of my life have been only bettered by the fact that he passed away. And I genuinely feel like, even though it was a traumatic thing and he died in such a traumatic way, like, and it wasn't an intentional thing. He didn't commit suicide. It was an accident. But I do think that it was like, that was his time. And that is just the way. And it was like more of a like cosmic, like, you know, this is kind of like your life, and it's not going to get better. And so you're going to be taken out of it kind of situation.
And it's, I mean, we all come to this earth with soul contracts. So that would have been his, and it also would have been yours for the way that it happened. And it turned into like this massive pivotal growth moment for you that stemmed you on this amazing journey to become who you are today. So at the end, like, yes, it was hard, but at least you can look back on it and be like, this is why it benefited me. And I'm grateful for everything that happened up to and since. So it's good you have that perspective.
100. I've always had this perspective, because I think like that if I got to take something from it, it has to be positive. And there's this quote from a poem that I really love. It says, I slept on a bed of swords for an entire year and was not cut once. And I really resonate with that, because like, again, like my whole like, not again, grief is kind of like, it continues on for years and years and years. But for that entire year, like, I was kind of like a shell of a human being, and I was going through like the worst year of my life. But I don't feel like I was cut. I was lying on that bed of swords, and I was experiencing so much fucking shit, and I was not cut. I only grew and became and again, like, grew to be more venomous, but also grew to be more soft and evolved and changed, and hence the butterfly and the snake.
I love that. Oh my God, full circle with the butterfly and the snake. So going through that experience, I know you mentioned that you had gone to therapy to kind of work through some of the grief, but what do you think was like the biggest factor in your growth or in your healing that really was able to help you get through that time instead of going the opposite way and like spiraling into some downhill mess?
So the thing for me is like, I think it's hard, because I definitely think that it's me as a person, and that there aren't a lot of people who would be able to experience what I've experienced and come out of it on the other side the way that I have, because there's people who will experience less trauma and be worse off. And I think this is kind of, it's hard to say, because it is like a hard truth, but there are people who are weak people and who are stronger people. And this is like mentally. And obviously there's like lots of different factors into this. But I think for me, like, again, it's really fucked up, but I would have a lot of people, especially people who knew my parents, would be like, you could have ended up just like them, but you didn't. Congratulations. Like, kind of saying, you're not a drug addict. Great. That's the bare minimum. And for me, it was always really interesting, because I'm like, how is that a compliment? First of all, second of all, like, it really reinforces this idea that like trauma should affect us and impact us on like this really deep rooting level. And yes, it does. But for me, I, as you said, like, was able to take that and learn and grow. And so like, that is because of the person that I am, and because of my spirituality, because of all of the stars aligning to be where they are. Like, I just am this kind of person. So it was just the added thing of like self-help books, podcasts, therapy, like those things all helped me on my journey. But I don't think I would have ended up in a different place, because, and it kind of goes back to this thing of like especially my uncle, like a lot of people ask me this, but he asked me this particular, like a few times, was always like, do you ever wish you had a normal childhood? Do you ever wish that your parents weren't drug addicts and that you didn't experience the trauma that you experienced. And I always
Mm.
say no. I would never ever wish for a different life. I would never ever wish for different parents because, again, I still love my parents. I have, you know, so much to be thankful for when it comes to the way that they raised me and who they are as people. But I wouldn't be the person I am without that trauma, without that experience, without having to help my parents through so much. Like my mom and I always kind of talk about this, like, I was born to help her, not the other way around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's no other way around our relationship. Like she was such a lost person with so much hurt and pain, and I saved her life. And yes, that was like a lot of shit to deal with when I was a
A lot
kid.
of
Like that
pressure.
was a lot of pressure. But with the perspective that I have now, I wouldn't change anything about that, because then it's like, who would I be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would be like you said, you would be a completely different person to who you are now.
Yeah.
So,
And I'd probably be a lot less interesting.
well, I'm really happy to hear that your relationship with your mom has gotten better. Because I think, I mean, not, I was going to say, I think it's important that we all have like at least some sort of relationship with our parents. And like, that is something that I struggle with as well with my mom. We are working through it, but I just, even if they're not who you want them to be or who you wish for them to be, or what, like if you compare them to other people's parents, like, you know, what you could have wished for, they're they're your parents for a reason, and we just need to learn how to stop putting our expectations of what we think they should be and just accept them for who they are and as they are,
Mm,
and then learn to work with them in that way. And it's freaking hard. So I'm
mm,
so proud of you and happy for you that you've been able to kind of find that balance and work through that.
I think it would also kind of work the same way. Like if you've got, if you feel like there's contention in your relationship with your
Mhm.
parents or any kind of family member because you feel like there's expectations on you to be a certain type of way, like the sooner like, I think I did this with my grandma. Like I stopped expecting her to be someone she wasn't.
Yeah.
And for me, that meant cutting her out of my life. But that might be a different situation for someone else. Like if you stop putting those expectations on people, they will feel that pressure draw away from them, and they will no longer feel like they're inadequate. Like for my mom, it was such a monumental thing for her to kind of realize that she wasn't like her mom. And like this, again, I didn't say this when I was talking about my trauma, but the reason I stopped having a relationship with my grandmother was because she called me a couple of days late for my
Mhm.
birthday when I turned 15. And my mom was like, she doesn't want to talk to you, like her dad's just died. And my grandma was like, no, he hasn't. Where's the obituary? She fully
Wow.
was like, you're lying. So that's just a glimpse of the kind of person that she was. So for me, I was already on that point where it's like, I don't want her in my life. I was already like, nah, I can't deal with it. But that just kind of like last nail in the coffin. And that was
Mhm.
also the last nail in the coffin for my mom, which is like kind of a really, really good thing, because my mom was consistently trying to make excuses for her. And she was like, okay, you can mess with me my entire life. You can do whatever you want with me my entire life. Like you can, like, I accept the shit you've done to me and
Yeah.
the abuse you've put me through, but you will not be treating my daughter that way. And I think that was like a moment for my mom to just really like kind of come into her own power of saying no to her own mother. And so back to your point, like those expectations that we put
Mhm.
on other people, whether they're out loud or not, like other people feel that. And so if you're feeling like there's a lot of pressure on you, you just got to take the pressure off yourself and all that.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point to make, is that like setting boundaries, sometimes that does mean cutting people off. And if there are people in your life where every single interaction is just constantly like anxiety, walking on eggshells, negativity, making you feel like crap, like doesn't matter who they are, like you do not need to have them in your life. You need to protect your energy and your mental health. And if that means sending them a Christmas card once a year and that's it, like so be it. And you should never have
Yeah.
to feel bad about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, amazing. This has been such a good chat.
That's good.
I love it. I know we're almost running out of time, so I'm gonna just start with the closing questions that I have.
Sure.
Um, what is one thing you wish you did more of 5 years ago?
When I was 20, I wished I wasn't in the relationship that I was in when I was 20, that's for
Ooh,
sure. Um, like again, any person who comes into my life, I don't see it as a bad thing. Like we're all supposed to learn something from everyone, and we all have different soul
yeah.
ties with different people. But that was definitely like a choice. For the length of time that I was in that relationship was the problem, I think. But what I did more, I definitely wish that I put more emphasis on myself. I was constantly trying to work to make everyone else happy, not because I wanted other people to like me, but it was like I was working a full-time job I didn't like. I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy in, but I thought I was happy because I thought
Yeah,
that's how I should be
I get
happy. Like
that.
it was kind of like I had we talk a bit about on our podcast like fat girl syndrome, which is where like, you know, you grow up as like the fat duff kind of girl, and
Mm-hmm.
so when you've never really been paid like much sexual or romantic attention and someone finally gives that to you, you're like, oh my god, I got to do anything I can to hold on to this. And so I
Yes.
was regressing a lot to be in that relationship. I was, you know, dumbing myself down, I was dressing differently, I was, you know, just a completely different person. And so I wish I did less of that.
And I can identify with that so much. So I've been on my own kind of weight loss journey and I lost 70 pounds. So I used to
Mm,
be a lot bigger than I am now. And I feel like I had the exact same experience where you're changing who you are for the relationship because you're scared that they'll leave because it's like you
yeah,
finally like have someone. So I
yeah.
definitely relate to that for sure. Okay. Who is someone that inspires you right now?
I mean, like, I think my mom inspires me, as we've kind of talked about in this episode. Like, I think her transformation and her journey is also really like no small feat. And
Mhm.
the, I think it was good because when I left Adelaide, because I'm originally from Adelaide in South
Okay.
Australia, which not a lot of people know about if you're from America,
I
but
do know what
I
it
live
is
in
actually.
that's good. That's good. So I spent like I grew up there and I moved there like just before the pandemic, which was not the best timing, but I think again,
Mm.
like for my personal journey, whatever, it was good. But for my mom, when I said I was leaving, she had like a bit of an adverse reaction. She was a bit like she had that like toxic mindset of like, oh, so you don't love me anymore. Like it was
Mhm.
like her initial reaction, not her actual reaction. So after we had that time to calm down and had a conversation about it, I was like, you can do things that you want to do now too. Like I'm like we don't have to stay here. You can move, you can do whatever you want to do. Like you can live your life the way you want to. Like you've always served other people, why not do something for yourself? And even though it took probably about a year after me moving for her to realize that she could make that decision I mean, obviously the pandemic didn't help anything,
Yeah, of
but you know,
course.
she really has grown into her own a lot over the last 5 years as well as I have. So my mum definitely inspires me a lot. I don't tell her that because again, it makes me really uncomfortable. So I'll probably like be like, hey, listen to this, so you know that I love you. And then she'll be like, oh, thank you. And I'll be like, okay, that's enough. So yeah, my mum.
Oh, I love that. That's such a sweet answer. I love that. Okay. And then final question. What is
Mhm.
one thing that you do on a regular basis that helps keep you aligned to yourself?
Mm. So I think it's like hard because there's a lot of small things that happen, like just happen naturally, just with who I am. Like
Mhm.
definitely, um, like it's automatic for me to check in with myself and go like with my relationships or my who I am and go like, what am I doing right now? Does that align with my values? Does it align with who I am? And for me, that's such a like subconscious thing. I want to say for like an active participation, the decisions that I make to do that would be like really taking time out to be with myself.
Mhm.
Um, you know, through realizing like that I'm neurodivergent and all of these different things that I've recently learned about myself, it's definitely been really important for me to take time away because I really what kind of forced me into it was like realizing how like burnt out I was
Yeah.
after the pandemic, and I was working like 3 jobs, doing uni, doing my own podcast. Like I was just like constantly going and it wasn't working for me. It wasn't serving me a purpose. So I had to slow down. And it forced me to. And I just thought I was really depressed for a long time. And then I was like, actually, this is not depression. And so I was kind of diving into this research wormhole. And so I learned that stopping, like actively pausing
Mhm.
things, was not a bad thing. Cause I feel like, again, it kind of comes back to this idea of like capitalism, like we're taught to be productive and
Yes.
constantly do things and never stop doing things. And if it's not productive, you shouldn't do it. So I really had to fight with that mentality and pause my life so that I could recover. And I'm still recovering, don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
like I have at least one day a week where it is okay if I don't do anything. Like it's okay if all I do is get out of bed. It's okay if I only take a shower and like just go back to bed and like scroll through TikTok or read a book or like do these different things that would be considered unproductive. That's really what aligns me with myself, is actually taking time for myself, because that's really underrated, I think.
Definitely. And I love that subconsciously you're already like, does this align with me? Because I think that's huge too. I do want to ask though, how did you discover you were neurodivergent? Like, what pushed you to
Yeah.
even look into that?
Well, like I said, like definitely the burnout was like
Hmm.
I had to really realize that like it wasn't just normal depression. Like I was like, oh, I'm just depressed. Like I've
Yeah.
been like I've struggled with depression since I was like 11. It's a big part of the reason why I went to therapy, because I was super depressed at one point in my life, and I was like, I need to figure this out. And when I realized, I was like, this is so much more intense, like than anything I've ever experienced. I was like, this something is like really, really wrong.
Yeah.
And so I literally like stopped working, or because I've been working so much, I stopped working for about 2 months and just like focused on the podcast. I, was like doing a lot around the house. I was doing a lot for myself, but I was also just like stopping and pausing. And through that time, I was doing a lot of research into it, because it's really, really, really inaccessible to actually get a diagnosis. So self-diagnosing is, I think, valid. And we've
Hmm.
had recently a clinical psychologist who has autism and ADHD on my podcast to discuss this. And we spoke about self-diagnosing, because she was like, at first I had to self-diagnose because that is going to be what empowers you when you go into your psychiatry appointment and you say, I'm neurodivergent and here's all of my research as to why. And like, the more I thought about it, the more it just made sense, like with my mom. And then because my dad had passed away, it was like a lot of reflecting on his actions. And like my
Hmm.
dad was the kind of person who was like super intelligent. Like he would talk to you and you would have no idea what he was talking about, because he would just be like on a different planet. You'd be like, Aaron, you have been talking for 4 hours and I need to leave. And he'd be like, oh, but just like one more thing. Like he would just had constant like special interest. And I'm like, if that
Yeah.
isn't like autism, then I don't know what is. So for me, it was really about like unlearning all those like ableist things of like, well, I can't have autism because I can speak really well, and I can't have autism because I'm empathetic, and I can't have autism because I date, and I can't have autism because I'm really interested in sex. And it's like, actually, autistic people have really, 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 really intense feelings of empathy. They have like too much empathy sometimes. And
Hmm.
then realizing there's actually like more of a spectrum of symptoms than a spectrum of autism. So like there's not no autism versus lots of autism. It's like, there's some people who have sensory issues and some people who have communication issues, and like it's like more like a pie
Yeah.
chart. And you realize that the pie chart can be more full in more areas on certain days, and it fluctuates. And so it was really unlearning those like ideas that I had about what an autistic person looked like, which is like a little boy, you know what I mean? And realizing I can be that, and that it's really empowering to like realize that I learn differently, I speak differently, I communicate differently, I connect with people differently. And that, yes, sex happens to be one of my special interests. And that's why I love talking about it. And that's why I have a podcast where we talk a lot about these kinds of things, because it's part of all of my neurodivergence and how it makes sense for me.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love that you were just on that journey and you're like, you know what? Like something's off. I'm going to figure it out. And then you just,
Yeah.
that was it. You were like, yep, this is me. And you just ran with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's
And
super
that's
inspiring.
Yeah, and that's when it came to like my intelligence as well. When I was younger, like
Hmm.
my dad was really book smart, my grandma was really book smart, and they both went to uni and like did all this stuff. And when I was in my young adulthood, I was like, I'm never going to go to uni. Like I'm not smart enough for that. But when I hit like late high school, I realized like I am smart. I'm just not math smart. I'm
Hmm.
not physics smart. I'm not chemistry smart. Like I'm people smart. And that's why when I went to uni, I decided to do a gender study major and sociology minor, because what in like is really fascinating to me is people, and how people connect with people, and how there's a million different ways to answer different questions in sociology. Like you can
Yes.
contemplate things for hours and there's never any right or wrong answer. I liked that there wasn't structure. I liked that there wasn't a formula. So I'd kind of spent my whole life thinking that I was really dumb. And that's again coming from my grandma, because she really kind of like instilled that, well, if you're not good at maths and you're not getting straight A's in maths, and you're not smart kind of mentality.
Hmm.
And so for me, once I realized that like I am neurodivergent and I do struggle because of my ADHD and I do struggle because of my autism, like it was so empowering, because I was like, I've been on this journey of like, I'm smart. I don't care what anyone else says. Like I'm intelligent and I can talk about things and I can write really good essays, and I'm just not smart how other people are smart. And that's okay. And that was a huge part of it too.
I love that. That's me. I really hope that your just even mini story there inspires some people who are kind of
Yeah.
struggling with the same things or just feeling like, like a little bit off here or there to kind of look
Yeah.
into it and just identify. So that's amazing. Um, okay, last question. What is something that you learned recently that you'd like to share?
Well, I think for what I learned recently is definitely like about the autism and like how it's
Mm,
more of a spectrum of symptoms rather than a spectrum of actual autism. And I've, it's really hard to say. What have I mean, I'm trying to think of something a little bit more specific that I haven't already spoken about, but
that's
I'm like
okay.
drawing a blank on that. I just think we'll stick with that answer because
Okay.
that's definitely what I've learned about recently.
I love that. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you, how they can like talk to you, work with you, all those things?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously I'm going to plug my podcast
Mm-hmm.
first because that's where I like, if you've liked what I've spoken about here, you'll like what I've speak about there. So our podcast is called Hot Girls Theory. We're on all the platforms. You can find us on social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Hot Girls Theory. And we're on TikTok at HGT Podcast because TikTok didn't like the hot girls part of our title, so ignore that. And then for my personal social media, I am at Fueled by Indi, because I am an emo kid at heart. So if you understand the
Mm,
reference, you'll understand the reference. But yeah, I'm at Fueled by Indi on all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And yeah, I definitely love to connect if you've listened to this podcast episode and it resonated with you, or if you would like to have me on your show, or if you'd just like to chat with me in general, please reach out because I'm such a friendly person. And I'd love to know if you listened and it made a difference.
amazing. Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed the episode and got something out of it today. The light in me acknowledges the light in every single one of you. And I hope you guys all have an amazing, wonderful day coming from two people just like you. Where's the record button? I literally can't find it. Okay.
Is it down the bottom?
No. Oh, there it is. Stop recording.